Hey guys, welcome to Hughes History. So glad that you could make it. What we would like to try to do in the next few minutes, guys, is frame out the national debt crisis. Not getting really political, trying to stay in the middle here, but really helping to explain exactly what it is. And of course, the national debt is the total amount of money that we've accumulated through deficit every year. And the United States has had a deficit the majority of its history. I think only in the 1990s, the late 90s under Bill Clinton and a Republican Congress, did we have more money coming in than we were spending out. So right now, the national debt, you could do the drum roll in your head, is cray-cray. It's almost $17 trillion. But you have to remember that's been accumulated since way back in the day. I mean, you can go back to 1791 and the national debt was somewhere upwards of $75 million, and that went back to the Revolutionary War. So let's look at really the Constitution first. We always look at Article 1 if we're talking about money, because really economics and kind of revenues and spending and borrowing lies with the legislative branch. Article 1, Section 8 specifically, which is delegated power, kind of a laundry list of things that Congress can do, states very early in the list that Congress is the only one that can accumulate a debt. And then it goes on to say that Congress is the only one that can borrow money on the credit of the United States. Even in Section 9, which is limitations, it talks about no money being drawn from the Treasury unless there's been some type of appropriation bill. So without a doubt, we can talk about a lot of things. The borrowing, the spending, and paying back lies with the Congress, with legislative power. Now, in terms of some of the mechanics of debt, I don't want to get too far into the layers here, but really the first kind of debt bonds were passed in 1917. And then in 1939, we started accumulating a national debt across the appropriation bills. And that really stayed that way all the way up to 1974. Congress passed multiple times, probably 30 or 40 times, to raise the debt ceiling. Meaning, when we kind of hit our ceiling on the credit card max, Congress, because they're in charge of borrowing and spending, and it's their constitutional duty to pay debt back, would raise that limit. And that's usually thrown in the debt limit increase into budget negotiations. So I think it was Mark Twain that said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. I think that's a really great quote, because has the national debt been part of the conversation when we have been negotiating budgets between the executive and the legislative branch? Absolutely. Has it ever been really used in a game of chicken where we were afraid we were going to go over the national debt limit without increasing it and destroying the economy? Not really. So I think that the answer really is probably somewhere in the middle in terms of have we kind of done this dance before. So in terms of more modern politics, there's some major things. The 1974 Budget Impoundment Control Act really took the national debt kind of out of the picture for a little while, giving Congress more really control over the budget and having more checks and balances in there so they could kind of control spending and borrowing a little bit more because the executive branch proposes the budget. And then in 1979, this is really interesting, a leader in the House of Representatives, Dick Gephardt, passed something called the Gephardt Rule. And that existed all the way up to 1995. And what it basically said, and this is because the Democrats controlled the House of Reps, was that there would be no more negotiation or fighting really over the debt ceiling. That if a budget was passed and that budget spent more money than we had coming in, the debt would automatically increase with the budget being passed. That didn't mean that they still didn't kind of use the budget as a mechanism to make sure that we weren't spending too much, but we definitely probably spent too much. And definitely between Gephardt and the House and the Senate and Reagan, there was definitely negotiations in terms of the budget and the debt ceiling, which were rolled up into one. And certainly the Democrats wanted military spending cuts, and Reagan wanted tax cuts for the wealthier Americans, and there was certainly negotiations going on there. In 1995, we have the Republican Revolution, and Newt Gingrich comes in power, and the first thing that they do is they get rid of the Gephardt Rule. And that's really we start seeing an increase in crisis in terms of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and increasing the debt ceiling. And certainly in 1995, when we were heading towards a government shutdown in 96, the debt ceiling was used in a certain degree to kind of put pressure on the executive to agree to cuts. And that certainly happened. Fast forward, we still had these kind of small crises, but nothing to the point of we were really going to not raise the debt ceiling until 2011. And the Republicans controlling the House of Representatives really demanded that the executive give something in order to raise the debt ceiling. And that's where you get the Budget Control Act. Humongous spending cuts. We came so close to that line that we actually suffered a downgrade, a credit downgrade. So with a downgrade of credit, the United States kind of increased the amount of money it costs to borrow money. The last debt ceiling crisis in 2011, a couple of years ago, I believe the figure is over 10 years that credit downrating is going to cost us $18.9 billion. The stock market plunged 635 points. Even coming close to that debt ceiling is really kind of something that might be dangerous for America's economic standing. And of course, there's people that disagree with that, and they say we'd always pay our bills back. We're just going to have to kind of tighten our waistband. And however you stand on that issue, that's where we are now. So fast forward to now. The debt ceiling limit we hit, I believe, on the 17th of this month. And of course, the House of Reps is basically stating with the government shutdown that in order to raise the debt ceiling, the president has to negotiate. And they want negotiations on Obamacare funding. They want negotiations on reducing spending. And that's where we are right now. We're kind of playing a game of chicken with our debt ceiling. And if we don't increase that debt ceiling on the 17th, that's where the story gets really interesting. Maybe Obama will compromise. Maybe he'll give in. Maybe he'll stand his ground. Basically, his case is that if we do this for real, if we really negotiate on the debt ceiling where if I don't give you what you want, you crash the car, that's not a really good way to run the government. What the Democrats would rather have done is kind of automatic debt increases and then negotiating the budget actually in conference committee. And of course, there's lots of great details in there. What else do we want to say? I think that we're kind of running out of time here. We could throw in the 14th Amendment. Certainly the 14th Amendment, the last clause of the 14th Amendment, says that the validity of the public debt shall never be questioned. And then it talks about any debt that's created by law. And then it kind of throws the words rebellion and insurrection in there because this was passed during the Civil War, blah, blah, blah. Some scholars have stated that because of the 14th Amendment, Obama could increase the debt himself. Obama said the other day that if he did that, it might work, but that it would really shake the confidence of the people that borrow, allow us to borrow money, because that would definitely end up in the Supreme Court. And do you really want to lend money to somebody that might not have the ability to pay it back or take the debt on in the first place? Man, we talk a lot, that's for sure. So, debt ceiling, right? Know what it is. Make sure that you understand both sides, and wherever you stand on this issue, you stand smart. There you go, guys. Make sure you subscribe to Hughes History. You can press the button right there. See the button on my shirt? How awesome is that? And make sure you check out the description below. We have lots of other EDU gurus and learning on the internet that you can take your full advantage of. So there we go, guys. Where attention goes, energy flows. I'm out of here. The bell's going to ring for learning soon.